Welcome to Regenerative Life Hacks, where we give you shortcuts to create more meaning and significance in life and work. We offer stories with real people who bring change to their lives. We invite people to learn the hacks through the Regenerative Life Project, and then they tell us their story. Join us for the project and see what you can share with us. Stay tuned at the end to learn how. I'm Max Zonizer, co-host of Regenerative Life Hacks, and with me as always is Carol Sanford, our positive contrarian who takes on hard challenges, building capability to see the essence of life situations and transform how to take them on. Hi Carol, how are you doing today and what are we chatting about?
Hi, Max. I'm doing great. Well, I think there's a really important subject that our guest is going to pay attention today, which is not being generic, but being when you think about improving a community and economics, something local, that you learn to think about it from place. Do you think about that? Because you do a lot of local things.
Yeah, I think about that a lot, and what comes to mind are some of my favorite places, um, and just how different they are, and that it's more than the physicality of them. And I even think about how uh, a lot of my students will refer to places that we work in as bad neighborhoods, and then they fall in love with them after a bit.
Yeah. I love that. That's perfect. Well, I have a little bit of a overview. I call it the lesson, right? And it's a lesson for me. I learned, and so I'm sharing it with you. Where what we do is look at the subject in a bit more depth that our guest is going to introduce their story from. And this particular one, the kind of hack we call story of place hack, but it's helpful to look at the different ways that place is conceived of nowadays in the world, and sometimes how limited or great it can be. So, you often nowadays hear the term place based. When I think of that and I listen to what people are saying, is they're more often meaning the place I live, local, where I shop, where I exchange, maybe where I work, and it's a location thing. And it's me separate from it, but I'm kind of acknowledging it. The next way up that we nowadays hear people talking when they're trying to move somewhere beyond just location is to be place made. And most of the time, you're seeing things like people building a local workshop where craftsmen can work, or a collective group of restaurateurs putting together something that is made from local ingredients, local materials. The craftsmen are all using local materials. And they're like if you're in New Mexico, you use chilies and pine nuts and you can label them Santa Fe or New Mexico or uh, some indigenous group that wants to honor the specific ingredients that are from that place and their things are made out of them. So it's not so much that you're making the place as you're making what you make from acknowledging the place. One that's become very popular in the last some decades has been visioning processes, bringing communities together and creating a community vision, a place vision. They're now being called, or a place envisioned, and that's usually done with brainstorming, with uh, dots on the wall, flip charts everywhere, and everybody gets input into what it is they envision the place being. And the intention there is to move beyond we're making stuff from here to we could create something that kind of can involve more people. It's often an effort to build community efforts, economic efforts, education efforts, and they're often also marketing. And you take a farmers market from just selling goods grown there to one that has artisan adventures, and but particularly um, carrying out the ideas that these groups come up with. So all three of those still leave us kind of separate from the place, and it's a lot about humans putting their stamp on the place, even sometimes being very anthropocentric. It kind of leaves out the voice. There's no voice for the often wisdom keepers there, or at least no voice for the natural part of living systems. What we want to look at today is something called place source, which means we source what we do from place, not we source our raw materials from there, but we source the story of this place, which has been there for millennia, and it's kept. The stories are kept by the wisdom keepers. It's kept if you can go be able to see the patterns in natural systems and economic systems. Uh, in transitional systems, how people settle and change their settlement patterns, what their community is like. You can come together with a single unifying essence statement about what the story of that place is. And then you can use that essence understanding to create everything else the community does. I watched this happen by my colleagues at Regenesis and all the communities that they bring together to learn to be able to see and work from sourcing our being from a place. Uh, and so there are many stories. You can go look at their website, regenesisgroup.com, and see more. And I was involved in one I'll tell you a short story from, which was in Rochester, New York. We looked at that valley where Johnny Appleseed was, where Kodak came about. And in that process of being able to have many different windows, the economic window, the naturalist window, the commercial window, the family, the transition patterns there, they were able to create a story of that place that then could reignite industries which were dying, small businesses which are dying, which all came from the idea of spreading understanding and spreading growth, like Johnny Appleseed did. So if you want to really get excited about something, if you work in communities or economic development, you're going to want to stay tuned right now to hear about what it means to being place source. So, Max, um, I would love to
Yes.
hear who we have in the hot seat and have our audience know who's we're going to be learning from.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. That's so important. I've just found when you start to figure out that story, boy, is it ever galvanizing to everyone involved. So to join us and continue exploring these ideas today is Sidney Cano, who is bringing about change in the world through her company Do It by using the regenerative economic shaper role described in your book, Carol, The Regenerative Life, to change a relationship to place. Sydney, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello, Max. Hello, Carol. Thanks for having me.
We're really glad to have you. And uh, you live where in Mexico? Do you live in Jalisco, or where are you found? Guadalajara? I can never keep track of you.
Right now, I'm here from connecting from Mexico City.
Okay. And I thought since we talk about place based, we would tell people where you're based. So now they can feel the first level of what that means, but you're going to move us quite a bit along. So would you give us a bit of context for why you joined this project, why you picked the economic shaper role, and a bit about what the project was you took on, so we know where you started and why.
Yeah. Well, I decided to join this project for a second round because we came across the opportunity to invest in a project that um, wanted to develop the site in a different way, right? And so different people were approaching us to see how we could invest in this. And so I found myself in a position no longer of being the entrepreneur, having the idea, but really thinking from a larger scope. And so it was a challenge for me, and I decided to join your project from the Regenerative Economic Shaper to really lift up my own way of thinking and in seeing the project in relationship with place.
Okay, so when you started and when all the people came to you, they were in one kind of mind, I'm guessing. Could you describe to us kind of the before or where you started, and then as you went through the project and maybe even into engaging them differently, what changed, and a little bit about how that happened? Just give us a picture of how it unfolded.
Yeah, well, when all started, we were asking ourselves, what should we do, right? What is the kind of project, or how are we going to frame this as a successful business? That was the main question in everybody's heads. And so when I worked through the project, I started seeing that it was definitely going to challenge me into detaching myself from the idea that we needed to create something right away, like a picture of what this is going to be, but really stepping back and looking at it from different lenses. And these different lenses require us to see, okay, if we are not just creating something that is going to be good in this place, that is going to create some kind of jobs that are going to lift up a little bit the living of the people in the community. How is it that we need to start working from and shifting really the paradigm into um, evolving the capacity of the whole place, including the people and the nature? They're not separate, right? So the first hack that I had to my own self was to really detach myself from whatever ideas we were coming from, and just be in the place, trying to hear out what is it that um, was the call for us, and how the investment then was not something that we were going to put into the place to try and make it work uh, as a business, but what is it that the whole system is calling in, and then that is the investment that we as a business community would bring in to respond in a better way to that call.
So, Sydney, I love hearing you talk about listening. And I know you mean a lot by that, and probably have a framework and a way of listening to that which we normally don't listen to. We listen to humans with voices, and usually the loudest voice. In this process, what did this project and your thinking and working lead you to a better way to listen? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, Carol. Well, definitely, this is being very challenging for all of us, especially for me. Like in the context that I grew up and the context that I work with or in, it's usually you don't listen to other voices but human voices, right? What we are here to do, what we want, what we can envision, but really listening to the place means a lot more. Means trying to tap into what we call patterns, and this is a very important skill that we as human can develop over time. And we really have to focus the energies and shift the way our mind works in terms of what we are perceiving and how those perceptions are not enough. We have to go look at what is beneath what we can see, hear, or touch in the surface, and really go to what is essential. And in that way, is that we've been learning alongside the Regenerative group folks that have been working with us in building up the skills for all the people that are working in developing this patterns and understanding who this place is. That place is not something that we relate to in a separate way, but really that we are embedded in and that we live with, right? It's a living entity that we should be relating to in a living way.
So one of the things I notice as I watch you is your eyes are looking up, you're imaging what it means and how you work. And I think that that's a really important clue to what it means to listen is it means to image a place at work. So if you go to a life shed, like the Santa Clara Valley is a Bull Run watershed, or I call them life sheds, you can look at everything that's there, how water moves hydrologically, how the rocks are formed, and sometimes, like where I live, they're huge drop offs down deep, deep into the ocean. And you can talk to the wisdom keepers that have lived there and passed along a lineage, and you can learn about what those things mean in patterns between how the water systems work, the natural biological system, and the human systems. But you have to do it by imaging it at work. And so that's really a lot of what the hack about Story of Place is about. So let me ask you one last question, if I could, Sydney. Um, I think you probably found the project very helpful to you. What did it do that you weren't quite doing for yourself? Is kind of the value you're taking away and seeking to use elsewhere.
Well, I can say now, after months of transformation for me, is that there is definitely a shift in aspiration and motivation in how we think about projects or even economic development strategies, right? It is not coming from me. It is not coming from what I want to do. I think it's right and good to do for places, but really is cracking that kind of ego that we as humans have in imposing our visions and our ideas and what we think we can do for the good of communities and places, and really putting us in a more humble position into listening what is being called from us to have a contributing role in what can emerge from this place.
Beautiful. All right, I'm going to call Max back in to help us because he is the ask a question man. Where are we with questions today, Max? And why are we doing this part?
Yeah, thanks, Carol, and thank you, Sydney, for sharing your stories there. Powerful and compelling. So every show we take questions from our audience on things they want to reconcile in their own lives. If you have any questions, listeners, watchers, for any of us around the regenerative roles in Carol's book, The Regenerative Life, put them in the comments below the video and or email them to us. There's an email address at the end of the show, and we may pick your question for the next show. Our guests will take a run at the questions that are selected, and then Carol may add her own responses as well. So we got the following question from an audience member. Um, Sydney, I don't know how best to change our economics. I feel some days like capitalism gives me no choice. How do you think about this?
Well, I definitely feel the same sometimes, but I have found useful to really get out of that box of trying to push back or fight the way the system is, and really get out of the box and of the doing more or doing better, and focusing really on what is it that we can contribute for the system's evolution. And that really even gives you a little more room. You feel a lot more freedom on what is possible to bring about, rather than what is it that I can fix or fight against the system right now. And if you can do this with a lot more people, that definitely would create a little a space where a group of people can think better about what we are thinking about. I don't know if that's giving any answer to the question that
Yep.
you are asking, Max.
I think it's a very good one. I'd love to build on that because I think we get into what I call the technology fix or the program fix, and we go look for best practices. So, what is the community modern movement or the any number of movements that we want to layer on top? And actually, even capitalism, people want to either go to socialism or a new crypto idea about it'll solve all the problems we've got. And what they are missing, what you're pointing to, is they're missing to pointing to the mind that is at work is really the problem. And you're talking about, well, don't work on it directly. Of course, I have a new book releasing right now that's called Indirect Work, which is about you don't work directly on capitalism or by substituting unless you're going to work on the mind that created the problem. Einstein was repeatedly 27 times I found in my research uh, the phrase that you can't fix the problem with the same mind that created it. And unless we go to looking at how we're working on trying to substitute one problematic way for another, which is generated with the same imposing our ideas that you speak of, we can none of those will work. So that's where I would end for today, Max. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. And thank you, Sydney, for being our guest on the show today. Fantastic. The show is free to join, everyone, but all of our guests, like Sydney, can join the show uh, via the Regenerative Life Project just by buying 5 copies of the Regenerative Life book. Send us the receipt, and we will then let you into the project. Then you can take on this challenge with the Regenerative Life self directed mini course. Then we jointly consider after you complete one project situation, we consider your stories and in bringing you on the show as a guest. If you are on the show, we will give you a free pass to our global virtual summit this fall. For more information, email us or check out the website. And thanks to you, everyone out there on the interwebs, for joining us for this episode. Please hit the like button if you got anything out of this, and also consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon so you get notified whenever we add more episodes. Thanks, Sydney. Thanks, Carol. Have a good one, everybody.